Big story coming in. India and China have agreed to disengage from Patrol Point 15 in Ladakh. India and China to disengage from Gogra-Hotsprings in eastern Ladakh. India has announced this disengagement decision after 16 rounds of talks at the level of corps commanders. The disengagement announcement has been made ahead of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit. The SCO Summit is next week. Then the question remains, will Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Chinese President Xi Jinping hold a bilateral talk? Is this a move back to the April 2020 situation along the line of actual control in Ladakh? The Ministry of Defence in a statement has said after the 16th round of talks at the level of corps commanders, Indian and Chinese troops in the area of Gogra and Hot Spring have begun to disengage in a coordinated and planned manner. What does this mean? Will this disengagement actually lead to de-escalation and ultimately de-induction? Or is that no longer possible given the level of deployment both of the Chinese forces and the Indian forces? I'm Gaurav Sawant. Much more on this big story coming up. But as always, let's get started with the headlines on India First. From Kingsway to Kartavya Path, Delhi gets Central Vista revamp. Prime Minister Narendra Modi unveils Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose statue at India Gate, says a symbol of slavery stands removed. Mamata Banerjee's big declaration says she will come together with Nitish Kumar and Hemant Soren to fight against the Narendra Modi government in 2024. Massive politics after 1993 Mumbai blast. Convict Yaqub Memon's grave is beautified. BJP slams the former Maharashtra Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray over marble and lights at Yaqub Memon's grave. The shack where Sonali Phogat was drugged could be demolished. National Green Tribunal upholds Gujarat Coastal Body order to raise Curly's down. British Queen Elizabeth's health deteriorates. Doctors put her under medical supervision. Prince Charles, Prince William and Camilla at the Balmoral Castle to be with the Queen. India has announced disengagement has started from Patrol Point 15 in eastern Ladakh. This, according to the government, is a coordinated disengagement of Indian and Chinese troops from the Gogra-Hotspring friction point. Big story breaking here on India Today. The Ministry of Defence has issued a statement saying, and I quote, on the 8th of September 2022, according to the consensus reached in the 16th round of India-China corps commander level meeting, the Indian and Chinese troops in the area of Gogra-Hotspring, that's PP-15, have begun to disengage in a coordinated and planned way, which is conducive to peace and tranquility in the border areas, unquote. What does this mean? There were multiple friction points in 2020 from the Finger area on the north side of Pangong So to Galwan to Patrol Point 15 and 17 Alpha, and also, of course, if you recall, the quid pro quo operations on the Kailash Hills on the south bank of Pangong So. China, in fact, was taken aback by the quid pro quo operations, and you'd recall that face-off at Galwan that resulted in 20 Indian soldiers making the supreme sacrifice of their lives. These soldiers, led by Colonel Santosh Babu, they succeeded in neutralizing, by some accounts, more than 40 Chinese soldiers at the LAC at Galwan. I now want to quickly cut across to India Today's Shiv Arur joining us on this big breaking story. Shiv, bring us details of this disengagement that is currently underway. Even as we speak, Indian and Chinese forces are disengaging from this petrol point Gogra and Hot Spring. How significant is this? What more details do we have, Shiv?
Well, it's a limited but very positive development, Gaurav. But when you look at it in the context of the fact that you've got two of the world's biggest armies that have been massed in large numbers for over 2 years now in Ladakh, then any forward movement has to be seen in that context. And therefore, it is definitely positive. Point number 2, this particular disengagement in Patrol Point 15, which is the Gogra-Hotsprings area of eastern Ladakh, comes over a year, I think about 14 to 15 months after the last act of disengagement took place in the Pangong area, which was early 2021. So it's taken over a year for talks to finally bear fruit as far as disengagement in another area is concerned. So it has to be looked at very, very positively. Remember, the Indian Prime Minister, the Chinese President Xi Jinping will be meeting, at the SCO summit, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit in Samarkand in just a few days from now. Yes. And therefore, this is going to be seen as a big positive. There will be skeptics who will say this is eyewash, but the fact that in many of these friction points, soldiers, units, troops, deployments have been, within visible distance from each other means a disengagement, even if of just a few kilometers, which is probably what this is something to be welcomed. And it's also, an indicator of the Indian Army's deployments there. Its absolute refusal to allow China to reach any of its, territorial or military objectives in that area for over 2 years and running. So I think all of that has really borne fruit. So something that definitely must be welcomed. A small disengagement in a limited area, but in the larger context, a very big achievement.
That's a very significant point you're making. Whatever China was planning, whatever China's plans were, clearly not successful. But Shiv, will it lead to de-escalation and ultimately de-induction of troops, given the fact that China is now making longer airfields, more bases, including medical bases, roads in Tibet and in Xinjiang? Can India trust China, Shiv?
Well, that really is the big question, because all indicators otherwise suggest, Gaurav, as you and I well know, that the Chinese have not demonstrated any willingness, or indication that they want to shift en masse out of this area. Since they deployed starting early 2020, they have remained there. They've built a lot of infrastructure. They've built permanent accommodations. They've built bridges over the Pangong. Recently, we reported how they've built, an early warning, radar base to keep track of movements in that area. So all of their activities suggest that they're in it for the long haul, and therefore these limited disengagements have to be seen as part of a larger game of chess that China is clearly playing. They make small moves to make it seem like they've, pushed back, but their larger game is clearly still of a very hostile posture. Also remember that apart from disengagement, de-escalation and de-induction of troops from this area is really that will be the real indicator that China has shifted out of here and no longer has ambitions in Ladakh. That hasn't happened just yet. In fact, China has only bolstered its air bases, deployed more troops, artillery, weapons of all kinds. There are lots of airspace intrusions that have been taking place over the last many months. So that indication is not yet there, Gaurav. So, while we do, in a limited way, welcome forward movement, positive movement, let's remember that the Chinese are still sitting on our doorstep, and they mean business. The best part about all of this, of course, is that for 2.5 years and running, India has proven to be the only country that has meant business right back at China and really simply in every possible way built a wall against Chinese objectives. So a lot needs to be said about the Indian Army there as well.
Shiv, that's a very important point you're making. For joining me here on India Today, many thanks. Let's try and widen the scope of this discussion. Let's try and make sense of this disengagement announcement, even though very sketchy details in public domain just as yet. Joining me on India First, Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma, former Ladakh Corps commander. He's dealt with Chinese transgressions along the LAC in Ladakh directly when he was commanding a corps in Ladakh. General, Welcome on India First. In a moment from now, we'll also be joined by Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar to give us a diplomatic perspective on what's happening. But General Sharma, to you first. You've read this terse statement that's come from the Ministry of Defence. 16 rounds of talks at the level of corps commanders. Disengagement has started from PP-15, Gogra-Hot What does this disengagement actually mean on ground to you? Is this just moving back a couple of 100 meters, a couple of kilometers either side to create a buffer zone so that there is no repeat of a Galwan?
Yeah, thank you for inviting me, Gaurav. The statement indeed is terse and simple, and it is devoid of details. But suffice it to say that in the entire eventology that's taken place over 2.5 years, PP-15 has seemingly been a difficult point. So even now, when the 16th round of talks took place on 17th of July, it's taken 50 days for us to actually announce that there is some kind of disengagement taking place. So PP-15 is an issue where Chinese were stuck up and not wanting to budge from a position, and we were also not wanting probably to give in and seek our thing. So
China didn't want to budge. China didn't want to budge, especially from PP-15. And General, why in your view didn't China want to leave this place? Did it enjoy some kind of a strategic height it did not want to lose out on? That's extremely crucial at this point of time. In fact, did China think that it could continue with salami slicing? Was it taken aback by India's QPQ operations? General Rakesh Sharma, General, was China taken aback by our QPQ operations, and is China moving back very reluctantly? Okay, give me a moment as I try and reestablish that link. We seem to be having an issue with both Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar and General Sharma's link at the moment. But this is being seen as a very crucial breakthrough at a major friction point. Not to say that friction doesn't remain both at Depsang in the north and Demchok in the south, both in eastern Ladakh. Now, those are very crucial friction points, and that is where patrolling is still not happening till India's patrol points. So are we moving forward? Is this one step forward? 15, Gogra-Hotspring. Apart from that, Pengong Soap. And I want to show this on the map. I want our producers to put out that map full frame so that we can talk about it in eastern Ladakh, the various friction points from April, May 2020. Now, when you look at what happened, 15th of June 2020, there were violent clashes between the Indian and the Chinese army at Galwan. This is where, after an agreement, India wanted to monitor Chinese troops moving back as decided. Unfortunately, the Chinese troops were not moving back the way a decision had been taken at the level of commanders, and this had sparked off a military standoff. China later announced in February 2021 it had lost 5 military officers and soldiers in that clash, including their battalion commander. But according to Russian agency TASS, China had lost 44 soldiers in the Galwan clash as against 20 lost on the Indian side, led by Colonel Santosh Babu, who was awarded a Mahavir Chakra posthumously. The image on your television screen. And ever since, this roughly 800-kilometer long line of actual control in Ladakh, and that's the map we are talking about, showing you various friction points, north bank and south bank of Pengong So, where China had come up to finger 4, wanted to restrict India to finger 2. India insisted on patrolling till finger 8. China wanted to patrol till finger 2, and a decision has been taken that neither side will patrol up to their claim lines, at least till the situation improves. I have Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar joining me on the broadcast. Ambassador Sajjanhar, what do you make of this Ministry of Defence statement about disengagement at Patrol Point 15?
You know, there are two aspects, Gaurav, that I, look at this development from. Number one, I feel that it is a tactical move on the part of the Chinese because they know that the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting, 22nd meeting, is going to take place in person. It's going to be in Samarkand in Uzbekistan. And of course, it has not been announced, but it is likely that Xi Jinping is going to attend this meeting, because this is an organization in which China plays a very prominent and a predominant role. And of course, Prime Minister Modi is going to be present there for a variety of reasons. One of the important ones being that India takes over the chairmanship. Yes. So I think there is to get a better atmosphere, to get a better climate. And I think China has realized also by this time that India is not going to relent. India is not going to budge as far as restoration of bilateral relations to normalcy till the situation on the border comes to, becomes normal. So I think this is a tactical move. I think we need to welcome it because, that is what we have been striving for right from April, May 2020, that we have a restoration of ties that existed at that time. But that having been said, we have also been talking about Depsang, we have also been talking about Demchok, and those have not been resolved. So I think while welcoming this, we need to continue.
So for the benefit of our viewers, let's put this in perspective. Ambassador, let's put this in perspective. The friction points where tensions started in April, May 2020, have we restored the situation to pre-April, May 2020 situation? Because Depsang and Demchok, that predates this April, May 2020 situation. Am I correct, sir?
Yeah, you are right in a manner of speaking, but I think when we are talking about this and when we are talking about that, all the agreements, 93, 96, etc., they have been totally violated by China. So the trust levels are very low as far as we are concerned. Yes. The second point is, I don't think this is a restoration to April 2020, because right now between finger 4 and finger 8 on Pangong Tso on the North Shore, we are not able to patrol. Earlier we were patrolling right up to finger 8. So I will not say that, it is a restoration of the position as it existed in April 2020. There are very many differences, but I think these are tactical moves that are being made. And while we are discussing the line of actual control, how to have peace and tranquility on the two sides, I think it is essential also that Demchok and Depsang are also discussed and there is some sort of an agreement there, because otherwise this will leave an issue that will continue to stay open. It will be like a festering wound, yes, which will continue to stay open, and it could blow up any time. So this is the point, Gaurav, what you have made. This is the point that the Chinese are also making, that these are pre-existing issues. Demchok and Depsang are pre-existing issues. They do not they are not as a result of what has happened in 2020. But I think what is really important is that the trust level, as far as India is concerned in China, that has come down very drastically.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the point we were raising on this broadcast throughout. Can India trust China? And perhaps the answer is a very big no. For joining me here, Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar, many thanks. I now want to shift focus to the other big story, and it's a major development. The grand redevelopment of India's power corridor. Now, there's a new parliament building that's coming up, a new common central secretariat, and a revamped 3-kilometer-long iconic Kartavya Path from the Rashtrapati Bhavan to India Gate, where under the canopy, you now have an iconic statue of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. Prime Minister Narendra Modi unveiled the Kartavya Path and this iconic statue of Netaji Bose. The government said this is an effort to shed all traces of a colonial past. Let's listen in to what Prime Minister Narendra Modi had to say.
आजादी के 75 वर्ष पूरे होने पर देश ने अपने लिए पंच प्राणों का विजन रखा है। इन पंच प्राणों में विकास के बड़े लक्ष्यों का संकल्प है, कर्तव्यों की प्रेरणा है। इसमें गुलामी की मानसिकता के त्याग का आह्वान है, अपनी विरासत पर गर्व का बोध है। आज भारत के आदर्श अपने हैं, आयाम अपने हैं। आज भारत के संकल्प अपने हैं, लक्ष्य अपने हैं। आज हमारे पथ अपने हैं, हमारे प्रतीक अपने हैं। और साथियों, आज अगर राजपथ का अस्तित्व समाप्त होकर कर्तव्य पथ बना है, आज अगर जॉर्ज पंचम की मूर्ति के निशान को हटाकर नेताजी की मूर्ति लगी है, तो ये गुलामी की मानसिकता के परित्याग का पहला उदाहरण नहीं है। ये न शुरुआत है न अंत है। ये मन और मानस की आजादी का लक्ष्य हासिल करने तक निरंतर चलने वाली संकल्प यात्रा है। अंडमान के वो द्वीप जिसे नेताजी ने सबसे पहले आजादी दिलाई थी, वो भी कुछ समय पहले तक गुलामी की निशानियों को ढोने के लिए मजबूर थे। आजाद भारत में भी उन द्वीपों के नाम अंग्रेजी शासकों के नाम पर थे। हमने गुलामी की उन निशानियों को मिटाकर इन द्वीपों को नेताजी सुभाष से जोड़कर भारतीय नाम दिए, भारतीय पहचान दी। कर्तव्य पथ केवल ईंट पत्थरों का रास्ता भर नहीं है। ये भारत के लोकतांत्रिक अतीत और सर्वकालिक आदर्शों का जीवंत मार्ग है। यहां जब देश के लोग आएंगे, वो नेताजी की प्रतिमा, नेशनल वॉर मेमोरियल, ये सब उन्हें कितनी बड़ी प्रेरणा देंगे। उन्हें कर्तव्य बोध से ओतप्रोत करेंगे। इसी स्थान पर देश की सरकार काम कर रही है। आप कल्पना करिए, देश ने जिन्हें जनता की सेवा का दायित्व सौंपा हो, उन्हें राजपथ जनता का सेवक होने का एहसास कैसे कराता? अगर पथ ही राजपथ हो तो यात्रा लोकमुखी कैसे होगी? राजपथ ब्रिटिश राज के लिए था, जिनके लिए भारत के लोग गुलाम थे। राजपथ की भावना भी गुलामी का प्रतीक थी, उसकी संरचना भी गुलामी का प्रतीक थी। आज इसका आर्किटेक्चर भी बदला है और उसकी आत्मा भी बदली है।
So the Prime Minister is very clear about it. This is a new India that's coming up. Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose under that canopy where King George V was removed. Not in 1947, sadly in 1968. Well, it now is a new India that the effort is to move towards. That is all I have for you on India First this evening. Many thanks for watching.